Welcome to another segment of ACRP TV. Today, our spotlight is on ACRP's Diversity Advisory Council, something we're very excited about. My name is Michael Causey. I'm the editor-in-chief here, and I've had the chance to talk with our guest a few times before and looking forward to this discussion with Otis Johnson, who's the Vice President, Product Line Executive, and Chief Diversity Officer at ERT. Otis, thank you so much for joining us again.
Oh, my pleasure, Michael. Look forward to our conversation.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about, I love asking people how they got into the clinical trial industry, and I'm not sure if I've heard the same answer twice yet, but I'd love to hear how you got into this industry to start off with.
Yeah, no problem. So I learned about clinical research through a job I had as a research assistant at New York University School of Medicine. One day, I remember quite vividly, I was in the lab separating white blood cells to support HIV research. I noted that Merck was written on one of the test tube labels. So out of curiosity, I reached out to Merck to inquire about what they were going to do with those cells and whether there was anything I could do to help in the labs. To my surprise, they invited me to interview for a clinical research role, co-authoring protocols and managing clinical trials. This was not the lab position I had asked about. Anyway, they spent much of the interview educating me about clinical trials and the specific role I was interviewing for, as clinical research was not something I was aware of during my undergraduate studies. I got the job and spent 13 years there working in various scientific and operational roles. Since then, I have worked for two large contract research organizations, a technology startup, and now for ERT, a global data and technology company that provides the pharmaceutical industry with solutions and services to facilitate the collection of safety, efficacy data from patients participating in clinical trials. And regulatory agencies like the Food and Drug Administration and the European Medicines Agency use this data to determine if a drug or vaccine is sufficiently safe, effective, and worthy of approval.
Otis, I'd like to ask you too, and maybe COVID has made this a little easier to explain to people, but talk about why clinical research is such a great career option today.
Yeah, no, thank you for that question, Michael. It's really important. So clinical research is a good career option because it not only provides you with a financial means to take care of yourself and your family, it is part of the pharmaceutical industry, an industry that is in the business of improving quality of life. And in many respects, it is an industry that saves lives. Look no further than the recent race to a COVID vaccine. The entire world was looking towards the clinical research industry with hope and anticipation. I cannot begin to tell you how gratifying it is to work in an industry that delivered when it mattered most.
Talk now about ACRP's Diversity Advisory Council that got going a few months ago. I believe you've all had a few meetings. I know you've got some ambitious, exciting plans on the drawing board, but if you could talk about why you think this Diversity Advisory Council is so important right now.
So one of the comments I've often heard about why the clinical research industry is not as diverse in terms of the workforce, and also not as diverse in terms of the patient participation in clinical trials, is that there's just not enough diverse talent with the types of expertise that's needed to conduct clinical research. And I tend to reject that type of argument. I usually feel that we're not looking in the right places for talent. And I believe that an organization like ACRP has a role to play in changing this type of dynamic. One of the key objectives of ACRP and one of the committees I'm leading as part of the council is to increase the diversity of the workforce. And we're attacking that problem of not knowing where to look to find diverse talents. And there are some really good ideas that are coming out. As you heard about how I got into clinical research is not something that's taught mainstream in a lot of colleges and universities. So part of what we're trying to do is identify those colleges and universities with the clinical research programs. And then for those colleges that don't have a program, we're embarking on an education campaign and to encourage this awareness around clinical research as a career option.
This is very exciting. It's so nice to hear, I've talked with other guests before, and it's so important to raise awareness, and we need to talk about these issues. But now I'm finding it personally exciting to see you and this Diversity Advisory Council and so many other people like Danielle Coe with Black Women in Clinical Research actually getting out and doing tangible things. It's exciting. Again, we're getting beyond talk, which is important. We need to raise awareness, but you all are starting to sort of, put some muscle on the bone, if you will. What are you talked about it a little bit, but if you could maybe for a second, just give me some of your broader hopes and aspirations for what the Diversity Advisory Council and your own work elsewhere can achieve in this area.
Yeah, so I think the Diversity Advisory Council can become a source for information and guidance around finding appropriate talent to support clinical research, and also a source and an advocate for people who are interested in participating in clinical research. Also as a guide for universities and even high schools to make sure that there's just education about the value of clinical trials and the value of clinical research in advancing human health.
Excellent. Really, really inspiring. Thank you so much for joining us and for all the work you're doing here, Otis. This is just, it's definitely inspiring. This has been our ACRP TV Spotlight on ACRP's Diversity Advisory Council. We've been speaking with our old friend, Otis Johnson, Vice President, Product Line Executive, and Chief Diversity Officer at ERT. Otis, again, thank you so much for joining us today and all the work you're doing out there.
My pleasure. Thanks, Michael.